real-life stories from everyday people in recovery, from mental health issues, trauma, substance misuse, and behavioural addictions. Please visit the website www.lifeinrecovery.co.uk for links to social media and a range of books written by your podcast host, Bren Coy.
Lovely to see you. Nice to meet you. How are you?
Very good, Bren. Nice to see you too.
To give you a bit of context to this, in 1997, when I was 17 years old, I heard you and Alex P on the Essential Mix on Radio 1. And it was
actually before. It was before. It was 90. I tell you when I did the Essential. It was 96 because because I was actually in detox when I had to do that mix.
Brilliant. So, well, I remember hearing it, and prior to that, I was kind of like banging to all the indie stuff like Oasis and all that, and then I heard that mix, and it like proper blew me away, and I got into DJing as a result of that, and you know, listening to people like yourselves and Carl Cox and Savage, and went on to become a DJ myself, and played hard house and trance and stuff like that for many years. So so when I saw that you were in recovery, which I actually wasn't aware of until recently.
So I use the word I'm in discovery.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
That's my own take on it. I'm a smart recovery trainer and all that. I went to the rooms for 3 months in 96, but there was nothing else offered to us.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for me, basically. So, I mean, I went on my own journey. So, I mean, I went into the Charter Nightingale for cocaine, and I came out and never took it again.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I mean, this podcast is all about alternative routes of recovery, so not just 12 steps. I mean, I'm a 12-stepper, but I've also been down the psychedelic route as well. So I've used ayahuasca in my recovery, and also psilocybin as well. And I've been down many different routes: counselling, life coaching, all sorts of different therapies. And I haven't actually had anybody on the podcast yet who is kind of like into the smart recovery side of things. So it'd be brilliant to hear that from you. And I just want to get into your story really, because as I said, like I was kind of got into the music as a result of what was going on back then, like the late 90s. But that was kind of, I would imagine that was kind of like the peak for you, wasn't it, back then?
Yeah, man, it was 1 second, mate. It's so basically, look, I'll give you the story. In the 90s, obviously Ibiza was I suppose what happened, you know, I was very anti-drugs when I was very young. I got given a joint when I was very young by my mum. It was from Sensimilia. And for those of you who know about Sensi, it's like the strongest weed that was available at the time. And it blew my socks off. I had a thing called what's called a whiteout. So you go white. So I was pretty anti-drugs because of just the effect I had. And then inevitably, in '88, all my mates were at a rave, and they come home and said, "Oh, you got to go to this fucking rave. You got to go to the bells and all this stuff." And so basically, I was very anti, and then I was still DJing. I was doing the local pubs, and then I was exploring how to get drunk better and all that stuff. And then 88 came, and I was buying house music anyway, and they said, "You got to listen to this acid house music." And I sort of thought, "Oh man, it's a bit," but I loved it. And then my mates went, "Right, we're going to Warehouse Party." They came back and said, "That's not for me." No. And then they said, you got to come. So I went, and they were talking about a song called The Bells. The Bells. It was actually Dance with the Devil by Paul Oakenfold. And it was this dong, 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 dong. It was this crazy record. Anyway, from that sort of night, it was half a pill and down the record shop in the morning, where I was actually working anyway, and buying up all the house music that was coming in. And then, you know, I like most things, I immersed myself in my music further, and you know, it sort of, I badgered the local promoter to let me play at the house music night, and he let me play in the end. I mean, I've been DJing with my best mate Ali at the time. We've been DJing in my local pub for years, and it was like, you know, funk, soul, hip hop, and all that stuff. And you know, so I had a knowledge of DJing, and I played with my mate who's my mentor, or one of my mentors. John Jules is a mate of mine, a very old friend who owned the record shop I worked in. So I bought all this house music, and, you know, started going out and mixing the right places. I met Alex. I met Alex through our various, you know, escapades, and he said, "Come to Ibiza." Well, we'd heard about Ibiza, and me and my mate, we said, "Right, we'll spend the summer." And we went in 1990. I went with Charlie Chester actually to set up the first Ibiza trip. It was called Ibiza 90. And we did all the research work. We got fucking smashed up out there, and then he didn't book me for the gig later that year, which was great. And then yeah, so I went back myself, and Alex said, "Come and play at my club Space." So me and my mate Baggy, who God rest his soul, took his own life New Year's Day this year. So it was very sad. And but we went there, and we went to Space, and it was just, you know, incredible. And I suppose, and then my career was kicking off in England as well at the same time. There's lots of clubs opening up, obviously, in 88 and 89 and 90. We started running our own clubs, and I was resident at various places. I was very lucky, very, very grateful for the journey, let's say. But, you know, alongside that, my zest for life, let's say, and what I know now is my underlying sort of trauma. I was talking to someone about how someone's telling me about a book today about how, like, you're sort of 13 and 14-year-old, 12-year-olds, it's like when you sort of next a lot of learning, you know, like they say you learn all your faculties between being like 4 and 7 or 1 and 7. And then, you know, you learn how to live with those things, and you negotiate life in those early years. And then the next sort of set of learning or you know, conditioning, let's say, is around the age of 12 and 13, which was very traumatic for me, I remember now. Because my parents divorcing and being an only child and getting bullied at school and all this stuff. So obviously, I'm not blaming anything, don't get me wrong, but there was, you know, there's method in the madness. And I always believed that. I don't think, you know, my view of addiction is that it's bad behaviours, a set of bad behaviours, and not necessarily a disease or an illness, because all humans are addicts.
Yeah.
You know? Humans escape, react. They want it. Humans are aimed for pleasure. We don't want pain. We avoid pain, but we're always looking for that extra bit of pleasure. We want to experience life. We're experiential animals. We want to learn different things, so we want to experience things. And you know, because of the knowledge which is around now and what's known to us, you know, we're often, when you're on a journey or discovery, let's say, you are often questioning things. So, you know, our lives are, you know, the way we live, especially at the moment with COVID and all that stuff, is our lives have changed dramatically, but also we're in a constant level of stress. We're not in happy. If we were always happy, we would have no need for anything, but we're not. We're always, you know, we start our day in a little bit of a stress, which is fine, but then our bodies or our minds go, well, I'm a bit bored of this now. Let's get some adrenaline or get some cortisol, whatever the easiest way to get a chemical release is, we'll go for it. And, you know, if you're in therapy or you had counselling, you go to your, say, let's go to your happy place, and you have to sit there for 20 minutes and meditate to forget everything. And then you can be happy. So, oh, I'm in my happy place now, but it takes you a while to get there. So the living in the present moment is that moment of getting to a happy place. So obviously my behaviours from then were probably to cover up what had gone on for me early on in those lives, you know, making the mask, becoming Brandon the lunatic, which everyone knew me for, was a mask, you know, and it's a hard mask to let go of. But, you know, moving forward, my career in Ibiza was fucking mental. You know, I was there in Space for the first 6 years, you know, which was just wonderful. And, you know, we didn't sleep because me and myself and Alex were like the only DJs living on the island. And also, you know, we had a fair reputation for England. So all the clubs wanted us. They started seeing the potential, what was going to go on. We ended up playing every night of the week at different, you know, Pasha, Amnesia, Coup, Privilege, it was Coup then, you know, Space, obviously, Esparadis, Amnesia. So we had one night a week at every club as it was getting busier and busier at the island. We were like we were the governors on the island, really. But along with that came the hedonism and the zest for partying, which you can't do unaided.
No, massive amounts of sniff.
You would, but back then you wouldn't want to. I mean, well, the whole point of being there was to express yourself, and you were, using recreational drugs experimentally. It was an experience. It wasn't. We weren't aware of any of the after effects or the addictive nature of drugs, and it wasn't out in the public eye. It wasn't in the mainstream media. It wasn't. It was shunned. It was really stigmatized.
Yeah, I think it still is, isn't it? It's not really spoken about enough, is it?
It is, but it's not to say it's acceptable. It's understood a lot more.
Yeah,
I think the fact that we're in a place of mental health discovery now, and it's going to get much worse, which is we'd have to be mindful of what's going on in the world. But the thing about it is we know now it's not an illness, or maybe some people say it's an illness, but we know it's not something to be ashamed of, because it's not always, as you say, not always in our control, in our power. But it is. I think most of it is. I think if you're aware of your thinking and your behaviours, you can stop them, and you can change your habit within 30 days. It's your environment that causes you to get the triggers, and if you're not mindful, that will lead you back into the old behaviours. But if you're mindful, and you can still see, I got better. I didn't leave. I didn't go and disappear. In '96, I got very ill. My behaviours took me to some really mental places, and I took risks with my life, which were pretty profound. And I dived off ferry into Hong Kong Harbour, which you don't do, and that was like 30 years ago. I caught various illnesses from that, which were debilitating. So I was on a fucking slippery slope, and I was on the way to getting rid of myself. And I remember a moment when I switched into, I now know that I've got a problem with this. There's no way I can stop this, what I'm doing, or I wouldn't know how to, or wouldn't know what the future held if I did stop it. It was all like, wow, how would I live without this sort of thing? So it became like my life and existence. But my body was giving up on me. I was self-medicating to the max, and it still wasn't masking the pain. I got to this stage where I was sitting in an A&E department, just rocking backwards and forwards, called cocaine bug, I think it is. And I was just in a pickle. And I was constantly going to doctors and saying, give me painkillers for this, downers for this, uppers for this, blah, blah. And they said, we're not giving you anything, Mr. Block. You're just a walking time bomb. And so I was sitting in this hospital, and then I think what happened was I let go of all the anxiety for one moment of clarity. The whole stressful, anxious state I've been living in left me, and it went like my brain clonked and went bang, and I went, I've had enough. And that was it. That was my moment of realization that I no longer wanted to do this or have anything to do. But I had no idea where I was going to go or how to do it. That decision though was very powerful, because I took the action. I found the person to go and, where do I go? Where do I go to see? How do I get into places? I went and saw the doctor. I went into a place called the Charter Nightingale, very famous mental hospital for addiction and stuff back in Paddington. But in '96, as I say, it was very, 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 very hush hush. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't accepted. It wasn't, it was something that people were very naughty if they did, and they didn't know about the underlying issues. So sorry mate. So that moment of clarity in the hospital was just incredible. I mean, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had that moment, because I was given 2 weeks to live by my doctor, basically.
Do you mind talking about what your illnesses were?
So I caught TB, hepatitis, enlarged liver, chemical hepatitis, in fact, which means it enlarges through drug and alcohol substances, basically chemical. So that was that. And I had lung problems, obviously, for the TB and various other things. I'm better, completely cured now. I had an operation 25 years ago, but at that time I was dying. And not only
using How much were you actually? I mean, what was it? Was it just cocaine or was it other drugs? I mean,
yeah, I pretty much stopped using all the other stuff I've done with the E's. Acid wasn't, it was, you'd have to, plan yourself for a trip. Basically, I ended up using nearly an ounce a day every day, 28 odd grams. So it was an existence.
Yeah.
Just horrendous. And I think about it now, and I think, how could I even possibly have done it then? My doctor, who's the lead psychiatrist in London, actually wrote in my book and said, I have never met anyone who could take so much cocaine and still stand up. But I went to that man and saw him 25 years ago, and he said, if you come into my hospital, I can help you out. I said, well, I'm going to come in, but that was on Thursday. He said, come in on the Monday. So I had the weekend of absolute, I went balls out like I've never done before. Try my hardest to see if it would kill me over, and it didn't. So I got to the end of that year. I thought, you know what, I've got to go down this road now. I mean, I haven't killed over. So my constitution was huge, and so I thank whatever I thank. I'm grateful for my life every day. But yeah, I mean, but it's once you stop the substances, stopping the substances isn't the most difficult thing. It's living afterwards.
Yeah.
Why you have programs like 12-step recovery, you have the fellowship, which the community is what saves people's lives, talking about what's going on, because when you take the stuff that's in your head and you talk about it, you no longer have to carry it. So we carried everything that we thought about every day, we'd be fucked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. So
can I just ask you, you said, I thank whatever. Do you have a spiritual component to your discovery or not really?
Well, I mean, I suppose I meditate. I've transcended a couple of times. I've got out of forgotten everything and lifted into a place where I thought, if you go into, when I meditate, which I don't do as often as I should, but, I do, I get to attain, when I've done my first bit, let's say, I can sometimes get into what I go meet little Brandon and I meet adolescent Brandon in a place somewhere, and we sit together sometimes and talk. And that's, for me, is my place of power. Like, so when you escape the world and forget about what's going on, nothing matters.
Yeah.
You could be anywhere in the world. And that's when you're not actively anxious or stressed or thinking about things. So I suppose in a way that's a spiritual plane. I pray, not often. I just thank whoever. I thank God, but what God means to me is, I don't know what God means to me. I used to think the man with the beard and sitting on the cloud sort of thing. But it could be the trees. It could be that little furry thing back there.
Yeah.
I love animals, and so yeah. I mean, I think my spiritual. I'm aware of my spirituality now. I know that if I don't look after myself, my inner child will run away, and ego and was it IE and what would it anyway? I'm quoting them philosophers, psychologists. But I think you can think too much as well, because if you end up thinking too much, this is only for me, my experience. I think if you end up thinking too much, you don't live. If you're constantly, my therapist, who's fucking wonderful, this lady I see, she calls it paralysis and analysis paralysis. Basically. Yeah. Paralysis by analysing, right? So you analyse everything so much, and you look at everything so deeply that you actually get paralysed in your thinking, which stops you from doing anything anyway. So if you don't think too much, and then hopefully you won't get held back by the fear.
Yeah.
Thinking it leads to the fear, the survival mode.
Yeah.
Because everything's, I've got to protect myself. I can't be, So it's a great. The discovery journey is a great one to be on, the great path, and especially for humanity, especially in these times now, because Christ, we've been thrown a curveball the size of the sun.
Yeah, we have.
And I work in mental health now. Well, actually, I'm not right now, but I have done for many years. I worked in the drug and alcohol field for 7 or 8 years as a project worker. And it's then when you realise that the job you've done with yourself helps other people. You think, wow, it's actually worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel, I think we're often too hard on ourselves, which is normal. We judge ourselves by many other things, the stuff we, and more so now because of the availability of information. So, if I've taken Facebook off my phone, and I've only done that in lockdown because I just, there's nothing there that I need.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I've done the same.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought, Christ, what am I looking at this for? What's it doing for me? And nothing. I can, if I want to speak to my mates, I've got all their numbers now. I could text them, or and do I really need to know what's going that much in the world? Because if I live by what's going on in outside the world, I'm not going to live my life.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've taken it off my phone as well for exactly the same reason.
And unfortunately, the younger generation, let's say a few of them, there's about 3 or 4 generations now, X and Y and wherever it was, they're consumed by this stuff, and the moment they wake up, they're on their phones, and they'll be on Instagram and Facebook, guarantee it, and they'll go, oh, I need to be like that. You're now not living in your own life. You're now wanting to be someone else, or wanting to live like someone, or not even aspiring to the achievements, but just being, because you see something, you want it. It's like that whole keep up with the Joneses, isn't it?
Yeah, compare and despair as well, isn't it?
Because and we know that the other person the other end of it is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You compare, you haven't got it, so you despair. So instead of being grateful for what you have got, and it's difficult to be grateful every day, but grateful is a feeling. It's a feeling of gratitude. And if you can feel that for some part of your day, then you're miles in front. And a lot of the people who don't do this journey will, in this moment in time in life, won't have the tools that we have.
No, I mean, it's really interesting because you're talking from a completely different perspective than a 12-step person like myself. Yeah, it's absolutely identical. Everything that you're saying is exactly the same way that I live my life. So that kind of makes me realise that it doesn't really matter what program you work in. All that matters is that you've got these simple tools in your life. Like you said, like the meditation, the gratitude, helping other people, journey of discovery or recovery or whatever you want to call it. Like it, just very, very simple staple things that you've got to have in your life.
Well, I mean, look. Well, I mentioned to you earlier, I'm a smart recovery trainer. When I was on my journey, let's say, I was although I was adamant that the 12-step wasn't for me, it works for many of my friends, and I've got so many friends in recovery, let's say, who run. I mean, I've got one of my best mates. I run a Zoom group with him each week, which is not based around any, model. It's just a share and care group. Like a mental health group, a lot of people in recovery, a lot of people who not necessarily, people who just have depressive illnesses or just want a space to come and talk to some friends, have a bit of a laugh. So we do that every week. But there's no agenda. So there's no, it's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all have to live life. We just have to arm ourselves with the tools of humanity, which we need to keep our minds in check, because that will run away with you.
Well, what you said before about, everybody's an addict, and like the way I view it is the human condition is what you're talking about there. And when I look at addiction, the way I explain it is I say people who become addicted are people that have got emotional issues that turn into mental health issues. They medicate those mental health issues with drugs or alcohol or behaviours, and then they get addicted to those things because it becomes the medication. So when you're talking about an illness, yeah, it is an emotional and mental health illness, but not a brain disease as I see it. I just think that, your neural pathways have been grooved to such an extent through your behaviours, your habits, like you said, your drug use, that obviously your brain's going to be affected by it. But ultimately, the underlying kind of illness is just the human condition. What, like in AA, they call it the spiritual malady, but essentially that's just emotional issues.
But you see, it's that whole thing about a malady. It's not, it's. See, I don't get these labels. I don't like labels, because once you tell yourself something, you're it. So as soon as you label yourself something, you're gonna, we know what it is. So your brain hears, you go, right, here you go, that's what I am. Like in the morning when you do affirmations, you go, I am fantastic, I am fucking great, or I am this. But you say I am an addict, or I'm not worthy, I'm not shit, I'm fucking, you will feel like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much learning now about, you know, the way you described it and how I describe it. But, you know, if you know, I don't think it's worth picking apart, because it's a big thing. And look, the tools that, let's say, Smart use will be very similar to lots of stuff in the big book. You know, like it's not unique. It's, you know, it's, and if you go, the more complicated you get, the more difficult it becomes as a way to negotiate. Because if you keep it simple and just use some simple tools to find out why you are doing what you're doing, you'll find it a lot easier to get better.
Yeah.
Or to stop doing what you're doing. Because once you get to that stage, it goes, this don't work.
Yeah.
Doing anything now.
I think the key to it is to find what works for you, isn't it? Like, obviously there's a plethora of different journeys to go down, and it's about finding what works for you.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, but there's so much now. This is what I'm saying. There's so many things on offer. You can find different things, different routes of whatever you want to do to make it. But I'm saying the whole thing about, you know, putting yourself in a place of I am this, you'll be that. Whereas saying I'm just me.
Yeah.
I am me. I can't be anything else, and I don't want to be anyone else. I just want to work on me, and you know, as if I can, I'm not saying get better. So I can live in this world in a fairly happy mode, and when things do go wrong or become, you know, overwhelming, like at the moment it's pretty overwhelming for many people, which is a real shame, because, you know, I hope everyone can get the help they need, because, you know, it's going to be a sort of a rough ride.
Yeah, it is.
So I think, you know, the human conditions can become even more important. I mean, in COVID, it was, you know, the lockdown was lovely to see all the community going on and everyone supporting each other. As soon as lockdowns sort of finish, you see the world opening up to the same old crap again.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, there's not been much change, has there?
No, but, you know, I think we have to do the change. We have to follow the path which we undertook, however difficult it is. You know, I mean, life's going to become very difficult, which is a real shame, because, you know, we were doing sort of well, and, you know, mental health was becoming at the forefront of most talking, even before COVID. You know, the suicide rate was through the roof. You know, mental health issues, nothing to do with not necessarily drugs and alcohol, but mental health issues, depressive illnesses or whatever it was, you know, anxiety, stress. It was becoming known. Everyone was talking about it because everyone was feeling it. The world was moving so fast that to keep up with technology and keep up with demands and expectations of the world is difficult for anyone. No matter how much money you got, how successful you think, you know, financially or, you know, spiritually, whatever, things will throw their, you know, a curveball at you, and you can't ignore everything. Can't just say I'm going to transcend into the universe and hang about there for, you know, a few years, because, I mean, it'd be lovely if you could, but it's
thought about it.
Yeah, so have I. But, you know, because you open the front door and there you are back in the street again. So, you know, that's a lovely dream.
How did you get from 1996, when it all kind of went totally pear-shaped? How did you get from there to where you are now in working in mental health?
Well, so 96, I did a detox, 3 weeks, and that's when you said you did Essential Mix, because I actually now this is funny. I went into the hospital, and, you know, I came off that amount of gear overnight. Literally, they gave me so much medication, it was fucking unbelievable. And, you know, like, I said, I've been offered the Essential Mix. They said, you can't leave the hospital. I said, look, I've got to do this. It is a very important thing in my job. This is one of the things. This is like reaching the pinnacle of your career. You get to do Essential Mix on Pete Tong's show. So I left the hospital, and before I knew it, I got in a cab and ended up where you didn't want to end up. Just literally guide autopilot. I got a gram of gear. I took it. It was like one hit, it was nothing for me. A week before, it was like, that was not even my breakfast. That was like a sort of pre-breakfast breakfast, if you get what I mean. But that literally, my tolerance had gone down, and my heart rate went through the roof. And I went to do the mix. I got back to the hospital. I went on the suicide ward and the suicide watch, because my blood pressure had gone through the roof, and, you know, blah blah blah. And at that moment, I realised that if I wasn't mindful, I was out of control. And that's when I knew I had to be aware of what was going on and be, you know, like, be conscious of my thinking. So, you know, I did an extra 2 weeks. I came out Mixmag did an interview with me at that moment. I've got the copy of somewhere, but it was very, you know, very raw. No one had really known about any of this stuff. Everyone knew I was a nutter, but yeah, the story was, as I say, it was quite out there. And then, you know, I sort of I suppose willpower, my decision making. Yeah, I never came out of that hospital with the idea that I would go back. Like, I wasn't concerned about relapsing because I knew I wouldn't do it. Because I'd had that conversation so many times. I'd worn it out. You know, when there was not another neural pathway I could have tried to explore and say, I'm all right to do it, because it used every single one of them. So that wasn't an option.
Yeah.
And it never happened. I think I slipped a couple of times, but literally like nothing in comparison to what I was doing. It was never a relapse. Never went out and went mental again for days on end. You know, maybe once I had a little slip many years ago, but it was, you know, I never relapsed, and that was it. And to stop that overnight was remarkable, because I went straight back to DJing. I went straight to Ibiza and didn't drink and didn't take drugs. So I went white knuckled the whole way through, really. And it was white knuckling, mate. It was hard. The anxiety was killer.
Yeah.
I can't describe it. I would never want to go back there again. But you know, again, it's a learning experience. But it was so powerful. The fear was like, I can't describe it, man. It was just mental.
Just raw fear at all times.
I couldn't go out of a room. I was sat in a corner of a room for about 6 months. I couldn't face anything. But then I did slowly, but I never had that, the light at the end of the tunnel, and then, hey, I'm here. It was never that. It was slow, raw, small steps, increments, getting better. So I'd get a respite every month, and then 29 days and 28 days and 27 days. But in the rest of the time, I was still in that real anxious state. So it was really fucking hard.
But you managed to DJ as well? You're going out and playing as well? Yeah. Bloody hell.
Still the demons, mate. I just faced it head on, you know, and people had stories that, oh, you did. I said, but, you know, I know what I did, you know, and I didn't. So, you know, and moving forward, you know, 10 years, I was still sort of, I was emotionally empty. Although I hadn't taken drugs, I was still, you know, wasn't fulfilled spiritually. I suppose it was spiritual then. So I felt the urge to give back, as we do as humans, and I contacted my local drug and alcohol service, and I said, look, I'd like to volunteer. I have an experience which I'd like to, I don't know, use it for something. Turns out the girl who ran it was an old mate of mine. So she said, come along. She said, don't think you can walk in here and just spout out what you think you know, because it don't work like that. So I said, oh, really? She went, no. So they stuck me on a training course, an MVQ for drugs and pathways drugs, it was called, which was about the fundamentals of dealing with people, and active listening and your tone of voice, and these other, and harm minimization and all this the stuff about working in a drug service. And then from then I got offered a permanent job, which was great, and I loved it. I had some great outcomes, or some really good, some great feedback, and some people did really well on the back of, interventions we did together. And then that changed, the treatment system changed, and people got, it was overtaken by one of the trusts, and it became very tick boxy, and for me, that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to, to see it through. I wasn't just want to say, how you doing? Blah, blah, I'll come back in 3 weeks. Tell me how you're getting on, sort of thing. It was more, I realized there was more to be done than that. So this came up with the National Health Service, working with people with multiple complex needs, which is like everything: mental health, substance abuse, crime, homelessness, really difficult people to work with. But we took it on, this job, and the organisation we worked for, unfortunately, weren't great at supporting the staff, and I don't think they realised the work that needed to be done was so emotional. So we all pretty much suffered burnout. One of my mates, God rest his soul, he died in his sleep on the job. The other girl who took over from the previous project leader, who left after 2 weeks, by the way, she came out in boils, and you know, from the stress of the job. So it was hard.
Yeah, yeah. I can relate. I can massively relate because I did exactly the same thing. I was a drug and alcohol counsellor for about 4 or 5 years in prisons down in London, like Wormwood Scrubs and that lot. And now I manage the homeless team for the substance misuse service in Birmingham. So I can relate. Yeah, I can relate to everything that you're talking about. And funnily enough, I just wanted to say as well, my best mate's called Baggy. I'm an only child, and I was a DJ as well. So we've got. I think the stars have aligned for us to have this conversation.
So Baggy as well. Well, man, that is a weird one.
Yeah,
Well,
shout out to my mate Baggy and to your mate. Yeah.
I hope your Baggy's still alive.
He is. He's alive and well. Yeah.
Good, mate. Good. So yeah, moving forward, that sort of and you'll know what I'm talking about next. So you know, keep you staying safe, even So after that job came to an end, sort of thing, because the project had run out. But we really got some, you know, we did some good work in that with very difficult people. But I got burnout, and then on the back of the burnout, that's when I went into Celebrity Big Brother house with burnout.
Yeah.
So I went in, and the psychiatrist for the show. So the psychiatrist for the show said to me, he came in the room. He went, "I'm so pleased to meet you." He said, "I've been a fan. I've been a raver in Glasgow for years." And I said, "I'm so pleased you're on the show and all this." And he was going, "Tell me what you've been up to." And I was telling him I'm in the right fucking pickle. And he went, "Oh, no. Yeah, God." And I explained to him what I've been doing. He went, "Oh, why have you chose to come in here now?" You know, like, he said, "I couldn't do the job you've just done." Anyway, so, you know, I went in, didn't last. I came out because he said, "I'm not going to let you put yourself through therapy on telly." I was going through, therapizing myself. Is that what I'm saying? Therapizing? Anyway, it is now. And
we just coined a phrase.
Therapizing. And so I left that and I came out, and I obviously with that as well as the burnout, I was just drained. I was like, as Mickey Flanagan was saying, I was a costume of a man. And a friend of mine who I'd met, he's big in London in the addiction world. His name's Chris Hill, who runs a thing called Beat My Addictions. He's got like a program he runs. He mentioned the Tony Robbins event, and we both went. He'd been before, and I went, and the whole experience, you know, the uplift and the emotional thing was great. And I thought, oh, this is a bit of me. I need this. This is what I need to get myself back onto track. So I immersed myself in that environment for a while, and some of my mates were really in it, and I got a load of good friends from that environment still, and we're friends to this day. But I just found the old selling bit difficult. You know, the programs and buy this program, and I thought, I don't know if it fits for me. So I've not left it. I've sort of gone back because I've created a few mental health programs with some friends. We've got a charity on the way. We've got, you know, I designed an app for Mind Charity, which has been taken into the App Store now. Cool. We've got, yeah, I mean, it was a model we designed. I had a model 5 years ago, which was incredible, but it was so much work to do for the app. It was a recovery app, a journey app, let's say, of recovery, but the whole treatment system, it would be from engagement to new life, basically. But because at that time the internet was being used for really bad things, anything to do with mental health, I made so many terms and conditions. It was just such a minefield to negotiate. So it was sort of put on the back burner. But in the meantime, so I've created Happy Days on Facebook with my friends Michelle and Gaynor. Happy Days is just a nice page. People come on it. They've got a lovely community. We share the affirmations every day. I've not been so active on it recently, but they still are. That's going to be the charity. We run some events at festivals called Tent Talks.
Cool. I like it.
It's talks with intention.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah, I made that up. It's quite good. I coined that phrase.
Yes.
So, you know, we do health talks at festivals and have a little tent and, you know, some massage and holistic therapies. And then moving forward, I've been on this journey of, you know, helping people and doing podcasts and talking to people. I've never done any myself, but I'm happy to talk on many. And then obviously, as we were getting further down, the mental health stuff was getting really, you know, current, wasn't it? Everyone was talking about people's mental health, and we have to be mindful. It's okay to not be okay, and all that stuff. And suicide was going through the roof. And then I ended up doing I just fancied talking to people on Facebook, so I started doing interviews. I had like Johnny Benjamin. He was the man who talked him down from a bridge from committing suicide. Oh, sorry, taking his own life, not committing anymore. And various, but holistic therapists and some great people just talking about their stories, and and then it sort of morphed into something more. And then I sort of stopped that, and then see, the age is kicking in, and then more recently, obviously COVID hit, and my lovely missus moved down from Newcastle. We hadn't been together for long, but we moved in together, and we've been through lockdown together, and it's been incredible. So wonderful things happen. And through lockdown, I started a Zoom group. This Zoom group, because I actually went to do a talk at the Ministry of Sound in 2018 called Breaking the Silence, and it was about the stigma around mental health, and I did it with Richard Blackwood. And hosted a panel with Nordorf Robbins Music Charity.
Yeah.
And on the back of that, I said to the girl, look, if you I said, would you fancy doing a monthly group here? So she said, love to. So we started a group called Tuned Out. Time to tune back in, and it was and I had some great speakers come and speak at the group. So, and then obviously when we went to lockdown, we continued the group on Zoom. So the people have changed a lot. A lot of people, gone back to work and not, and people, but it's still a core group. We meet every week. And then on the back of that, I was thinking about moving to the coast, and I thought, you know what? And then she'd just moved down from Newcastle. It was a bit of upheaval again and uncertainty in the world. So I went back to the old drug and alcohol service to see if I could be a project worker again. And my manager there said, you don't want to work here. It's so shit. And honestly, she said, it's not changed. It's got worse. And I went, okay, fair enough. But then she's now gone to work for the Hep C Trust. Yeah. Hepatitis C.
Yeah, work very closely with them, yeah.
So you've got, I don't know who does the Midlands, actually. I've just joined so anyway, she said we're looking for a peer support lead in London North, which is my area, which covers sort of the London bit, but also Hertfordshire, which is where I live. So and because I set this project up 2 years ago, I know a lot of the services.
Yeah.
People who run the services. So I can now contact them again, which I've been doing slowly. But, I went back yesterday. We did some outreach, and it took me back to those days. I was like, oh, wow. And it was only when I got home last night, I sat down and thought, it's actually all right. We helped someone today. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So that feeling's better than any high, isn't it?
Fantastic. And, it's a great firm to work for, and they're doing some fantastic work. And they want the elimination is going to, happen to hopefully eliminate Hep C, which is brilliant. So I'm back in the field in a manner of speaking. I'm very grateful to have a job. It's a fantastic job to do. So that's where I am now. And, there's no gigs. So
I was going to ask you that question. Do you still DJ? And when you DJ, if you DJ, what do you play these days?
I play a bit of it. I mean, I'm on My Soul Radio, so it's I've gone back to my sort of soul-y, disco-y sort of esque roots. But funky house, tech, some tech house. I avoid this hard stuff now. I mean, I sort of dipped in a few years ago to techno and stuff, but for me, my soul lies in that stuff. So
the groovy stuff.
Yeah, so I play that when I go out. A lot of the disco remixes, and we do some ourselves. Myself and Ricky Morrison, who's my mate, we make some tracks. Dr. Packer sort of stuff, he's a friend of mine. So yeah, I mean that's sort of groovy, songy, singy, songy. I'm also a smart recovery trainer, but I'm also a goal mapping practitioner, which is the life coaching stuff. But what we seem to forget when we're project workers, we're life coaches.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Using the tools that we use in life coaching, motivational interviewing, strengths, managing resistance, all those things that come under that umbrella, triggers, learning to work with emotional, internal, external triggers and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So,
short-term and long-term goals is the key, isn't it?
Yeah, so the goal mapping, which I think you should look at. I'm a practitioner in goal mapping, which is fantastic. When I first heard it, my mate Brian, who teaches the goal mapping, he was again had a story, and he woke up one morning with this program which he wrote, and it just works. But he said to me when I was doing practitioners, because we're good friends, he was doing his talk, and he said something about music, because he used to be a DJ as well, would you believe? And he said, although I heard the records back in the day, I never listened to the songs. And I realised that since I'd gone this journey, I started listening to the music and the songs and what they were saying, as opposed to just hearing a vocal or a hook.
Yeah.
To the words, and like, so a great mantra I try and use is the praise cats. I've got peace in my soul. I've got love making me whole till you opened up your heart and shined on me.
Yeah, it's beautiful, that, isn't it?
And I noticed that. So when I'm playing, I listen to the songs and words and I sing, and I can't help it, but my voice is shit. But but it resonates with people, because music is an age-old remedy. It's part of communication. Deep set music is communication. We've communicated through music since we were cavemen.
Yeah, I've got banging to the music during lockdown again. Like I left it behind a long time ago, and then during lockdown I started listening to like my old music and my old mixes, and then before you know it, I'm like just listening to it all the time and making music myself. And
I did the other way around. I sort of had a rest from music, because I've obviously 35 years been DJing.
Yeah.
Lockdown for me was like because I spent weekends or week as well, but then we made sort of weekends that we say, well, it is Saturday. Don't matter if it rolls. It's Saturday and Sunday. We'll have a roast, or if we can get have a veggie roast or whatever. We'll watch some crappy Netflix, and we'll lay in our quilts, and and the sun was out, so we'd have barbecues. And so it was like, for me, it was a respite. And I haven't really, in all honesty, I haven't listened to loads of records, because for me at the moment, I love my music, but I'm involved in my job. Yeah. So it's
you're on a different path now.
I've got not on different path. I've got another path.
Another path, yeah.
So tomorrow I've tasked myself. I've got a day of listening to music, because I've got so many promos to go through. It's ridiculous. But I'm going to have a good go tomorrow and listen to some music. And believe it or not, I've got a gig tomorrow, a socially distanced club, which actually got an upstairs. It's not in the club as such, but they've given me a visor, mask, and I'm going to wear it in the club. I don't care. I walked out of the gig the other week because I hadn't socially distanced properly, and I thought, I'm working with vulnerable people. I'm not risking it.
Nice. Yeah, that's fair. Like sticking to your morals there, I suppose.
I wore a mask, and there are people going, "Oh, you got a mask on?" I'm going, "Well, yeah."
Yeah.
Fucking mask on. Why aren't you all wearing masks? Don't make it out me to be the one who's not wearing a mask.
Making you out to be the villain.
Wear a mask. Don't wear a mask.
Go to a club. Don't go to a club. What's your life? Sorry, go on.
Go on, come on.
I was going to say, what's your kind of message then? I usually ask the question, what does life in recovery mean to you? But I'm going to ask you the question, what does your life of discovery mean to you?
I think if I was going to tell people what my routine has been, I mean, I've slipped because I'm human, and I'm not going to beat myself up about it. But I don't look at Facebook first thing in the morning. I don't look at Instagram ever. I just don't. Because I saw myself getting embroiled and caught up in all that stuff, and I thought, I don't want this. I can see myself getting it, so I don't. So what I do is in the morning, I don't pick my phone up first thing. I'll give myself 10 minutes to get myself together, and I'll ask myself, in Smart Recovery, there's a 5-question thing, which is, how am I feeling? How am I thinking? How am I feeling physically? How am I feeling mentally? How am I feeling emotionally? And how am I feeling spiritually? So if you ask yourself those 5-6 questions in the morning and take time to think about each one, you're going to have 10-15 minutes before you actually wake up and get into the world. Because that moment you wake up, if you get up in the wrong side of bed, like, so for instance, you get up and you think, what didn't I do yesterday? Instead of saying what I achieved yesterday and then ticked it off and then go to bed. Instead of waking up going, oh, whoa, I didn't do that yesterday. You're living in yesterday. You're living in the past. You're not living today in the moment. And you can say day at a time, which is great, but it's actually, you can't say, oh, I've got to take today as it comes. Instead of going and saying, right, what's today got in store?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? As opposed to, oh, give me another day. I'm not saying that everyone, we all have those days. You know, everyone's probably going to have a lot more of them in these current climes. But for me, that's what I try and do to keep, because I have to manage my mental health on a daily basis. You know, I don't know. You know, sometimes I get up and you do, before you think about it, you're often running into that
madness.
Yeah.
The chaos. Yeah.
And go, look, I'm going to feel shit if I carry on thinking like this all day. I don't want to feel like shit all day. And you know, you have to manage it. And it's your, you know, how healthy is your mental health? We all have mental health.
Yeah. Of course we do. Yeah.
We've got physical health. We've got mental health, and without our mental health, we can't have physical health because our brain runs everything.
Yeah, I mean, peace of mind is the one thing above all that I value. Definitely. You know, if I've got a peaceful mind, if I'm doing all the things like you said, if I'm looking after myself physically, if I'm meditating, if I'm speaking to people, helping people, you know, doing things for the family, if I'm basically looking after all those different areas, then I wake up in the morning pretty peaceful most mornings. And the first thing I do every morning is I've got to look after my baby first thing when I get out of bed. So I can't be on my phone, you know, not present, you know, thinking negatively. It's just not conducive to giving her my time. So I'm glad I've got to this place of peacefulness.
And I give this one a cuddle every morning.
Yeah. Is that a she or a he?
It's a she, but I've got 3 others because she's got 2 from up north.
Yeah.
So I brought her 2 down. This is the oldest one I've got. Unfortunately, my other one, he went in bloody lockdown as well. My British Blue was fantastic. I've got his ashes actually. Replacement for him. He's a little Maine Coon, which is going to grow to be huge, but he's a nutter. Is
he like his dad used to be?
Yes. Exactly like.
My dog's like that. My dog's mental.
This one's an angel, mate. She's a reincarnation of, I think she's an old relative or something. She's just so cool, man. She knows, you know, you can look at things. She knows what she just knows, you know. So get yourself a pet, everyone. Get yourself a nice.
Get a pet, yeah. I did a mini podcast about that once. About I was going. I called it Rem's Ramble, and I was like rambling over the fields with my dog, and I was saying it's really important that you get a pet.
I had no idea you worked in the recovery world in Birmingham. Good for you, man.
Yeah, man. I've been in this work now since 2015, and I started the podcast 2 years ago, and it's just kind of like, you know, it's just a hobby really, but it's become a labour of love, and you know, I've managed to kind of like speak to more and more people that have got like loads of recovery behind them and loads of interesting stories, and people like yourself and other people, like loads of people from America and stuff. So it's just something that I love doing. It's getting out there. I'm hoping now that I've spoken to you that I'll get more listeners as well, because I know that you've got a great network. So that'd be fantastic if you can share it on your social media. That'd be amazing.
Let me know when you're going to do it, and I'll share it. Of course, I will.
I will do.
I'll actually give it a couple of weeks because to share it, because I want to get into the job first and make sure that's all going well. But yeah, I would definitely share it. Let me know when. Yeah, good job, mate. And you know, I remember when I was at Smart with training years ago that there's a big Smart community in Birmingham.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
His name Jamie, I think it was. My serves me correctly. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, simple is easier. Make it the simpler the better. You know, I've just written I've done a sort of mental health program myself, a life program, let's say. It's called Life Blocks.
Oh, cool. That's a good name. Now that you need to trademark.
On it, copyright. So it's a double meaning: blockages in life, but building life with blocks. Yeah. So the first block is, I'll tell you it actually. Well, if I can remember it. Of course I can. So the first block is fear, which is the first block is fear. The second block is awareness. The third block is mental acceptance. Fourth block is response. Then it's reconnection. Then it's knowledge, community, and gratitude. Beautiful. So I'll show you. It's very brightly coloured and all that, and it's quite. But there's under each heading, there's some stuff I talk about but you know, it makes sense, and it's, you know, how, who, where, what, how we're going to get this done. It's like a SMART goal, but it's in using the goal mapping as well as the other bits and pieces. So
it's interesting because, I mean, another thing that I really relate to is I got burnt out through my job as well when I was working as a drug and alcohol counsellor.
yeah,
That was just one thing I wanted to mention. But the other thing that I also relate to with this program that you're talking about, you know, when you mentioned before about your mate who you said he kind of woke up and he just had this program, bit like an epiphany, basically.
yes,
I went on a 10-day silent meditation retreat a couple of years ago, and whilst I was on this meditation retreat,
yeah,
my clarity of thought became so unbelievably powerful that I was able to write down. I wrote my wedding speech from start to finish and remembered the whole thing, like by the end of the 10 days, and wrote it all down. And I also had this epiphany about a program as well, and I wrote that down. And I've never shown it to anybody since, but it's similar, very similar to the stuff that you were just describing there. It's very similar to that. So yeah, I can relate to that stuff. And I think that, I mean, because I'm a big believer in, when I talk about a higher power or God, whatever you want to call it, I'm a big believer in consciousness itself is the higher, like the universe manifests from consciousness. Consciousness is the higher power, and we're all interconnected, you know, and it's like a universal mind. So whenever you get an idea that pops up, you know, literally like an epiphany, well, that's coming from consciousness, from this universal mind. And I strongly believe that as a species, as we evolve and we move forward in the future, I just believe that we'll become more as one. I believe that we'll all learn to help each other, because what you've described throughout your entire story, and I had this exact experience myself. I mean, I never made it as a world famous DJ, but I was, you know, semi-famous in my field in my scene kind of thing. But I had the same realization you've had, which is material things mean jack shit. Like, you know, you just said there before, you said like you've realized that actually I don't want to go down that route with the Instagram and all that kind of stuff. You know, why would you want to do that? Because it doesn't matter how much money you've got. It doesn't matter how many gigs you've got. It doesn't matter how many women you've got. It doesn't matter how many cars you've got. None of that stuff matters. What really matters at a grassroots level is just helping that next person, you know, and the feeling that you get from just giving back to that person. And you kind of personify that in your story, which is really nice to see.
thank you, mate. Yes, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's a consciousness. I think it's an awareness. I think there's loads of things, and I just think if people are watching this and you're feeling a bit out of sorts, then just try and reach out if you can. Don't feel afraid to do it, although it may feel like the biggest thing in the world. You know, people will listen. People are there to and we'll gladly have an ear for you now. It's what is, you know, the world's opened up like that, which is great.
Yeah,
you know, you can talk to people. You can say, look, I'm feeling like shit, and fingers crossed they'll listen.
Yeah. And what would you say, just like to finish off, what would you say if you had like one bit of advice to give anybody that might be watching this or listening to this and, you know, maybe they are struggling, what would you say?
All I would say is, look, don't suffer in silence. Reach out. Don't be alone. You don't have to be. There's plenty of ways to reach out, even through, you know, these strange times and these restrictions we're living under. Just get on the computer even and go to a Zoom meeting, have a look, do some research. Don't sit and wallow if you can help it, because, you know, there is help out there.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks very much for being on the Life in Recovery podcast, Brendan. It's been Brandon. It's been a pleasure.
Mate, it's great to talk to you, bro.
Yeah, cheers, man. Definitely. It'd be nice to stay in touch. Thanks very much for listening. And if you've been affected by any of the issues discussed in the podcast, just look underneath the podcast at a range of links to mutual aid organisations. Please don't forget that you can support the podcast at patreon.com/lifeinrecovery. And if you go to the website www.lifeinrecovery.co.uk, you'll see links to all my social media and all my books. Peace and love, and goodbye for now.